Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, episode 33, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. I want to start today's podcast by telling you about our book, Big Four Accounting Firms Interview Questions. It has 32 interview questions and answers, and that book is on Amazon. And there's a link in the sidebar of our website, big4accountingfirms.com. Make sure to check that book out if you need help with your interview. Okay, let's get started. Today, I wanted to talk about a service that the Big Four is offering and that is also in the news. The service is tax reform advice. And I wanted to speak about tax reform because it's in the news. It is one of the biggest promises that Donald Trump made in order to help create jobs. And I wanted to speak about it to give some insight into how the Big Four use these opportunities to create ideas and win work. And so what do the Big Four do around tax reform currently? Because tax reform has not passed yet, but they're already out in the market selling tax reform advice to clients. So what they're currently doing is they are meeting with clients and making sure that they are thinking about tax reform and planning appropriately for it. In order to do this, they reach out to clients and set up huge meetings. And in order to prep for these meetings, the Big Four put together large slide decks and have many specialists and many service professionals come to the meetings. And what this means is it's not only the client contact that goes to the meeting. That means the person that normally deals with this client is more of the person that coordinates the meeting, and that person brings specialists to that meeting. So the types of specialists that they'll bring to a tax reform meeting be accounting method people, international tax experts, and these people don't really prepare tax returns or look at income tax provisions, but they specialize in other areas that are impacted by tax reform. And the reason they take so many people to these meetings is because they want to offer their best services to these clients, because there are now millions of dollars at stake on all of these tax reform projects. And the reason there's millions of dollars at stake, these large companies have a lot to lose if they don't plan for tax reform correctly. If Walmart or other large multinationals don't consider tax reform, they could end up paying hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes that they never expected to pay. People in the tax department would be fired if they didn't consider this, because the CFO needs to be able to tell investors expected outflows of cash, how much income tax is hitting the income statement, and so forth. And if you think about it, if Walmart or another huge multinational might have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes, then they're willing to pay a couple $1 million to the Big Four to have them come in and advise them on tax reform. So with all that being said, this is why you need to keep in mind when you're choosing your line of service within the Big Four, the growth of that line of service and what might impact that growth. And in this case, we're talking about tax reform, which would impact the tax line of service. And another example is Brexit. And there's all kinds of advising that's being done on Brexit. There's tax advice because of these companies that are in the UK, and they might have to move operations to Europe in order to keep selling services and goods. What are the tax implications of restructuring? But it's also companies just need help restructuring in general and any regulatory items that might come out of that. So advisory is also a good place to go if you want to work on Brexit. And it's just about being mindful when you're choosing your line of service. It's not, which one do I want to go to? Audit, tax, or advisory? I want to work in the office all the time, so should I choose tax? You should be mindful of regulatory changes and how that might impact your career. Because let's say you do want to go to a group because you don't have to be out of a client, you don't have to be ticking and tying in a work paper, but there's huge regulatory changes in that group. So that means it's going to be high growth and there's going to be a lot expected of you. Additionally, if you are looking for a fast-moving career and audit is in a slump, which it kind of is right now, then you might not want to go there. You might want to go to advisory and whatever groups are impacted by Brexit and tax line of service because of tax reform is going to pass soon, or you believe it might pass soon. So you want to get in there before it happens. It's just being mindful of that. And it's like I said at the beginning, I wanted to go over how this work is sold. What we went over today was it's right now what tax reform advice is going through is in the initial stages. There's these meetings in large conference rooms with a lot of people, a lot of specialists, and it's just meetings right now. But eventually there's going when tax reform starts ramping up, there's going to be work being sold if it does ever ramp up. It's about knowing which part of the life cycle we're in right now. In the life cycle, we're in the planning and beginning stages of this. Now, something similar is FATCA, right? FATCA is another tax service that was offered to clients, and we're in the latter stages of FATCA. And another thing is Sarbanes-Oxley. That when Sarbanes-Oxley was implemented, that was a huge boon to the audit industry, and there's a lot of partners and a lot of work being done around Sarbanes-Oxley consulting. But now Sarbanes-Oxley consulting is not a really big industry. Sarbanes-Oxley is just part of the regulatory environment. It's not something that's ever changing. And let's also relate that back to tax reform. Even though tax reform seems like it's ramping up in a big way, back in 2014, when David Camp, who we mentioned before, was on the House Ways and Means Committee, he had a tax reform proposal, and the Big Four sold services around that proposal, and nothing came of it. So clients are still hesitant now, and right now people aren't sure whether tax reform is happening. So this goes to say, be mindful both ways. Look at the growth, but also look at the downside. What if this doesn't happen and I'm in that group? Is there still enough interesting work in that group to keep me there, to keep me challenged, to keep me interested? So it's just thinking about all those things as it relates to your career, whether you're in college or whether you're in the Big Four now and looking to switch. And just wanted to use that to wrap up and remind you to visit our website, big4accountingfirms.com, and feel free to discuss tax reform or line of service within our forums. We have a forum section on our website. Just make sure to register on there, and you can create topics about whatever you want. Also, make sure to check out our book, Big Four Accounting Firms Interview Questions, which has 32 interview questions and answers to help you with your interview. And you can check that out on Amazon.com. We also have another book on there, the Big Four Accounting Firms Recruiting Guide. Make sure to check that out. Also, if you could, please review, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks again.